Hello ESCA friends. In this episode we're going to talk about a very exciting and thrilling action movie. This film tells the story of MIT members who fight to rescue 49 hostages held at the Turkish consulate after ISIS invaded Mosul on June 11, 2014. Without further ado, let's dive right into the storyline of the movie Escape from ISIS, also known as 49. In 2014, the city of Mosul, Iraq, fell into the hands of the terrorist group ISIS. Within hours, a once vibrant city turned into a field of fear and chaos. Amid the turmoil, 49 staff members of the Turkish consulate, including diplomats, security officers, and their families, were captured by ISIS. They were taken hostage and used as bargaining tools for negotiations. Although they had enough weapons and ammunition to fight until the very last drop of blood, the Turkish intelligence agency did not permit them to resist and instead ordered surrender, considering the lives that would be lost if a battle broke out. After ISIS forces successfully overpowered the consulate office, we are introduced to a large, muscular man known as Al-Gojo, a warlord of ISIS assigned by his commander, Abu Perez. Abu Perez ordered Al-Gojo to take the 49 hostages alive to the ISIS headquarters in Mosul, Iraq. The bus sent to pick up the hostages had already arrived. The terrified captives were forced to line up one by one to board the bus. After the world witnessed the brutality of ISIS behind the scenes, the Turkish intelligence agency quickly mobilized under the leadership of Ekrem Başkan. He was the commander of MIT, better known as the Turkish Intelligence Agency. He explained the background of Abu Perez, who was formerly known as Hassan el-Kadhim, an officer during Saddam Hussein's regime. Now, after joining ISIS, he goes by the name Abu Perez. Abu Perez was the mastermind behind the hostage operation that had been planned at the consulate office in Mosul. In the middle of the meeting, Ekrem Başkan received a video message from Abu Perez. The footage showed dozens of hostages surrounded by armed militants, while Al-Gojo prepared to deliver the message that Abu Perez wanted to convey. After watching Abu Perez's video of threats and demands, Ekrem Başkan emphasized that the situation had to be resolved quickly, as Turkish citizens' lives were at stake and they needed to return home alive. Meanwhile, Ekrem Başkan spoke with the president, advising not to comply with Abu Perez's demands. The president agreed, as it was impossible for Turkey to acknowledge a terrorist organization. Ekrem also informed that he and his team had already located where the hostages were being held, and he had prepared one of their best agents for the mission. The highly experienced secret agent assigned to this task was August. He was undercover, disguised as an ordinary civilian, walking with a sack of wheat on his back to avoid drawing attention. At the same time, August encountered a group of terrorists who had just massacred dozens of people and were about to assault a woman with a child. Without hesitation, August stepped in to save her. After rescuing the woman, August met his colleagues at a safe house to prepare for his mission. There, August met Jackie and Sahara. Afterward, August planned to scout the situation and conditions at the ISIS headquarters, which had a compound inside. He pretended to be offering fresh apples, but the ISIS fighters firmly refused and immediately forced him away. Night had fallen, and August and his team were preparing to infiltrate the hostage location. Ekrem monitored and gave commands from the MIT headquarters, while the hostages were being fed bread by Al Gojo's men. The Special Forces unit, led by August, had already entered the detention area. Sahara was assigned to observe from a distance using a sniper rifle. Meanwhile, in the detention room, the child of one of the hostages was talking to his mother, imagining that a superhero would come. Suddenly, Al Gojo appeared, scolding him and forbidding him from looking out the window. Then, Al Gojo cut the little boy's doll. August and his unit had silently entered the courtyard of the detention building, taking down the terrorists one by one. The whole team made their way inside the building, checking several wards, and nearly every area had been secured. To their surprise, the detention room was already empty. Jackie then found the remains of the doll that belonged to the child earlier and took it with her. August suspected that the terrorists had already learned of his arrival through the CCTV and then fled. After that, he ordered his men to find a shortcut to pursue the terrorists who were taking the hostages, while August followed a corridor leading underground. There, he could hear the voices of the hostages being forced to walk through the tunnel. Upon reaching the tunnel, one of August's men was shot. Fortunately, the gunshot wound was not too serious. Al Gojo was seen planting explosives to collapse the tunnel so that the Special Forces team could not pass through. In a moment of panic after the explosion, Ekrem called out to his team but received no response. A few moments later, Aguz finally answered, confirming that the entire team was safe. Ekrem then ordered Aguz to withdraw his forces and abort the mission. Although Aguz insisted on finding another way, Ekrem did not allow it. The 49 hostages were transported by truck to be relocated to a safer place, specifically, an abandoned factory in Syria, about 60 kilometers from the Turkish border. Ekrem reported to the president that their first operation had failed and resulted in only one minor injury. However, Ekrem was almost certain about the location where the hostages had been moved. For the honor of the nation, those hostages must be rescued immediately, said the president. Moments later, Ekrem received a video call from Abu Perez. From the video call, Abu Perez issued an even harsher threat, declaring that they were ready to execute the hostages and had prepared suicide bombers in the name of jihad, though in reality, it was nothing more than a meaningless death. Abu Perez demanded that his requests be fulfilled quickly and warned Ekrem's forces not to launch another operation if they wanted all the hostages to survive. Ekrem immediately held a very serious meeting. He wanted to change the strategy because of the threat of suicide bombers, meaning operations could no longer be carried out as before. On the other hand, it was also impossible to fulfill Abu Perez's demands. Therefore, Ekrem tasked his members to think hard, as he wanted a new rescue plan for the hostages and something to report to the president. Meanwhile, Turkish intelligence was already busy tracking the location of the hostages taken by ISIS to a place far from the previous location. Auguz, together with Jackie and Sarah, were discussing how to find Abu Perez's forces. Then Sarah came up with the idea of infiltrating by disguising herself as one of the terrorists. August thought it might be possible for her to get inside, but how could she evacuate 49 hostages safely out of there? Moments later, August also had an idea. The next day, Ekram would continue the meeting regarding the new plans his members had prepared. After reviewing them, the first plan was considered highly risky, as it involved using heavy stun gas to incapacitate the suicide bombers. This could also affect the 49 hostages, making evacuation difficult, with a success probability of around 60%. Although the plan had already been simulated and even carried out once during a rescue operation in Georgia, that case only involved 2 hostages. Ekram was still not satisfied with the first plan. For the second plan, he wanted to hear from August. August proposed kidnapping the most important figure in the organization, Abu Perez himself, in exchange for the 49 hostages. If the plan succeeded, the terrorists would be forced to trade the 49 hostages for Abu Perez. The current hostage location was in the city of Yazidi, where most of the Yazidi people had already been massacred. Many houses were left abandoned, which August could use as safe houses to hide with the target for several days before moving him out of the city with the help of his teammates Zara and Jackie. Considering Abu Perez was guarded more tightly than most presidents, Ekram asked how August planned to extract him from the city. August explained that he would not use a typical operation, but instead infiltrate by disguising himself as one of them. Ekram was quite intrigued by August's plan. Coincidentally, he had information about someone suitable for the mission, discovered from intelligence reports. The person's name was Brian Kowalski, a Belgian citizen whose mother was Syrian. He was currently wanted across Europe and always wore a mask during operations, so his face remained unknown. Intelligence reported that Brian was on his way to join the terrorist organization, giving August the chance to replace him. After successfully capturing Brian and knocking him unconscious, a problem arose that seemed trivial but had a major impact. Brian had a scorpion tattoo on his left hand. Since the disguise had to be flawless, August needed to replicate the same tattoo. But August came up with another idea. He decided to injure his hand to make it look as if he had removed the tattoo. In short, August, disguised as Brian, was picked up by the terrorist forces to join them as one of their members. The new recruit had arrived at the ISIS camp, which served as the detention and monitoring site for ISIS sympathizers. Every new member would undergo brainwashing with extremist jihadist doctrine. They were forced to study a distorted, hardline interpretation of Islamic law, twisted to justify acts of violence. Before continuing his mission, August inspected his new room provided by ISIS for rest, fearing there might be hidden cameras or audio bugs. The next day, August began his activities by distributing food to the Yazidi prisoners, whom ISIS referred to as infidel Yazidis. ISIS considered the Yazidi religion as devil worship rather than a faith of the people of the book. Inside the detention area, there were dozens of women and children from the Yazidi minority, whom ISIS had massacred in 2014 in the city of Sinjar, northern Iraq. In short, August and the other new recruits underwent military training while keeping an eye on Abu Perez's movements. They were trained in the use of both light and heavy weapons. They were also trained to kill without hesitation, even against prisoners or fellow members deemed traitors. On the other hand, Jackie was assigned to gather information about a circumcision doctor under the pretense of organizing a mass circumcision event. In reality, the doctor would later be used to deliver a message to the 49 hostages and to assess the situation inside. As time went on, August kept gathering more information about Abu Perez. Abu Perez was extremely cautious. He even installed explosives in his own car as a precaution in case of an emergency. One night, the hostages were resting with their hands still tied. Suddenly, one of them fell ill. August continued his mission by preparing a safe house and inspecting it for future hiding. After that, he returned to the ISIS camp. Then August was called by the executioner using Brian's real name, Abu Ustaz. Still confused by what the executioner meant, August saw Abu Perez walking out with his guards. It turned out the executioner was trying to introduce a woman to August, a woman who had previously communicated privately with Brian. This was information August had missed from Brian Kowalski's data. The woman immediately rejected August because she knew for certain that he was not Brian, the one she had known even through social media. The situation grew tense, and once August's disguise was exposed, he didn't think twice. He immediately attacked the executioner. The executioner immediately informed Abu Perez that there was a traitor named Abu Ustaz and warned him to take cover quickly. At last, Abu Perez was captured by August and immediately taken out to be secured in the hideout. August transported Abu Perez in a pickup truck loaded with tomatoes that he had seized from the local residents. In short, August reported to his commander, Ekram Baskin, that he had successfully brought Abu Perez to his hideout. Ekram was very pleased to hear this, but the bad news was that August's cover had been blown, so he had to get out of there quickly. Sooner or later, Perez's men would discover August's hideout, and it was suspected that the roads outside the city had already been blocked. The hostage who had fallen ill earlier was examined by the doctor. Fortunately, it was nothing serious. The doctor advised rest, plenty of fluids, and gave some medicine. It turned out that inside the medicine bottle was a message for the hostages, with a code that read, "Wait for the red mask." The hostages finally felt relieved by this news. They now had hope of surviving and making it out alive. Ekram received a video call from Abu Perez's subordinate, the executioner. In the conversation, the executioner once again threatened him with the lives of the 49 hostages in his hands. However, Ekram showed him a photo of his master, already secured by August, and then made an open and clear offer: the exchange of the hostages. After the call ended, the executioner was furious. He ordered all his troops to sweep the city to find August's hideout along with Abu Perez. The impact in the hostage room grew tense. The executioner commanded some of the guards there to point their weapon, warning that if anything happened to Abu Perez, all the hostages would be slaughtered. Meanwhile, August was trying to figure out a way and assess the situation so he could escape with Abu Perez. By coincidence, a garbage truck passed by, and August hijacked it. The journey did not go smoothly. As expected, all exit routes out of the city had already been blocked by ISIS forces, and every passing vehicle was being inspected one by one. August realized that if he stayed there any longer, he would be discovered. In the end, he was forced to secretly get Abu Perez out of the truck, sneak behind the vehicle, and slip into a quiet residential area while trying to contact Sarah. But there was no signal. Meanwhile, ISIS soldiers were alarmed when they found the garbage truck without a driver. This was soon reported to the executioner, who had just arrived. The executioner immediately deployed his forces to the city's garbage disposal area to investigate. In short, August and Abu Perez had already arrived near the dumping site, but they didn't move in right away because August first wanted to contact Sarah, who was already there. Then she saw a garbage truck approaching and thought it was August. Fortunately, August had already informed her over the phone that it wasn't him. Unfortunately, when they were about to escape, Sarah was already trapped by the ISIS forces. Without thinking twice, she fought back. However, she was overpowered by the executioner, who suddenly came from behind and subdued her. In the end, Sarah was taken by the executioner and his men to the headquarters for interrogation. One of the most emotional moments was when August could do nothing as he watched Sarah being captured by the terrorists. He was forced to choose between rescuing his comrade or sticking to the plan of bringing Abu Perez to the northern part of the city as ordered by his commander. In the end, August pretended his signal was bad, then returned to the hideout to prepare a disguise in order to rescue Sarah. On the other hand, Sarah was being harshly interrogated by the executioner. However, she held firm, refusing to reveal any secret mission to him. Until finally, Sarah was tortured with the searing heat of fire on her arm. Without wasting any time, August was already at the ISIS headquarters to rescue Sarah. When he entered the building, he encountered one of the members who was preparing food, and killed him. The executioner, already furious with Sarah for refusing to speak truthfully, finally gave her 1 hour before his men would come and do whatever they pleased with her. At that moment, August arrived at the interrogation room, pretending to deliver soup. Sarah immediately recognized him, while the executioner realized he had never ordered any soup. Answer, it began. After defeating the executioner and his men, August immediately unlocked Sarah's handcuffs and took her to a hiding place for treatment. Sarah was in severe pain and deeply traumatized, but August tried to comfort and encourage her until her spirits gradually improved, and she felt truly grateful to be part of August's team in this mission. After finishing Sarah's treatment, August reported to Ekrem that he was now with her and awaiting further orders. Within half an hour, August had to get out of the city. August, together with Sarah and Abu Perez, returned to the ISIS headquarters garage to switch their vehicle for Abu Perez's powerful, bulletproof truck. In that situation, Abu Perez even tried to persuade Sarah by attempting to bribe her with an offer many times greater than her salary. However, Sarah was not tempted by his offer. Not long after August finished inspecting inside the garage, a group of Abu Perez men arrived, only to be shocked by the sight of 2 corpses lying in front of the garage. The entire ISIS force stood guard at the city exit. They gathered and confirmed that the truck used to transport Abu Perez had already been fitted. The bomb prepared by Abu Perez could, of course, be detonated via a phone connection. Without thinking twice, one of his men ordered that it be detonated even if Abu Perez was inside, because the situation was extremely urgent. But August was smarter. He had already moved the bomb to another truck before he left, until finally. They confidently shouted takbir, thinking it was Abu Perez's truck that exploded, but it turned out to backfire on them. Not long after, Al-Gojo, who had risen again, approached the know-it-all, took over the command as he pleaded, and killed him.
Sen öleceksin. Seni öldüreceğiz. Tek.
Morning had arrived, and the helicopter from Turkey carrying Ekrem had reached the Turkish border post. Meanwhile, August had already arrived at the disposal bridge for the hostage exchange. At the same time, on his way, Al-Gojo received a call from Ekrem. He was informed about the exchange process, that August was already waiting with Abu Perez at the bridge about 6 kilometers from the factory where the hostages were held. Al-Gojo agreed. He then ordered his men to bring all the hostages onto a bus and told them they would be taken for the exchange, so that they would appear cheerful and smiling sincerely. Ekrem had already spotted the bus carrying the hostages moving. Then Al-Gojo contacted Ekrem to inform him that the hostages were safe and on their way to the exchange site. However, Ekrem was not too pleased after watching the video recording provided by Al-Gojo. Even though the video showed all the hostages looking happy, Ekrem still ordered JG to get ready. The bus carrying the hostages was now approaching the location. August prepared to welcome the hostage exchange. Finally, Al-Gojo and his troops arrived at the site, bringing the bus with the hostages ready for the swap. As everyone fell silent, Al-Gojo demanded that Abu Perez be sent first. It turned out that Al-Gojo had a devious plan after finishing the video recording of the hostages who was supposedly ready to be taken away. They were taken back down and locked again in the detention room inside the factory. Al-Gojo planned to kill all the hostages once Abu Perez had been rescued, and the ones on the bus were ISIS soldiers prepared for a suicide bombing. The exchange process was almost complete. Abu Perez was still walking across the bridge at the same time as the bus. Then August prepared to take his position, and Sahara readied her RPG. Even though Al-Gojo had a devious plan, Ekrem was smarter. They had already suspected the situation would turn out this way. Then Ekrem instructed JK to immediately rescue the hostages while wearing a red mark, in accordance with the code that had been given to the hostages beforehand. Finally, the hostages were safe, and Jeki secured the suicide bomb. After all the hostages were rescued, August immediately fired at Abu Perez as he was walking, and Sarah destroyed the bus with her RPG. A gunfight broke out, and August and Sahara were surrounded from all sides. Meanwhile, Al-Gojo reported to Abu Perez that the hostages might have already been killed by his men. Abu Perez demanded that this matter be settled today as well. The situation at the factory where the hostages were being held had already been surrounded by Jeki's team. All the ISIS soldiers were killed, and at last, the hostages were able to leave the detention room. Meanwhile, August and Sarah were still fighting against Abu Perez's troops. They were overwhelmed because they were outnumbered. Until finally, Sarah. Abu Perez tried to contact his men, thinking they were still with Sandra, and ordered them to kill everyone. But Sandra had already been rescued by Jackie and was on her way toward the border. Upon hearing the news, Abu Perez fell silent in frustration. He then resumed the battle by attacking August, who was off guard while helping Sarah. who was already on the brink of death. The two of them exchanged gunfire until finally, the bullets in both of their weapons ran out. Abu Perez was finally defeated by Oguz, after which Oguz returned to Sahara, who was already on the brink of death. As always in situations like this, help arrived. Agus and Sarah were immediately taken aboard the helicopter, but fate had other plans. Sarah had already passed away. Sarah was taken away and prepared for burial. After that, Jackie arrived together with the hostages. Then August handed over a piece of a doll that Jackie had brought from the detention room. Because August had promised to return it to its rightful owner. And that's where the movie ends. That's the recap for this movie, guys. Always support this channel by clicking the subscribe, like, and share buttons, and don't forget to leave your comments if this video entertained you. See you in the next videos. Cheers, friends of eScar.